The Galactic Union had existed for thousands of years, a powerful alliance of countless alien species ruling the stars. They had seen many young civilizations rise and fall, each one given a choice: submit or be destroyed. When the humans of Earth were discovered, the Union laughed at their primitive ways. Compared to the mighty empires of the galaxy, humanity was weak, scattered across a single planet, with weapons that looked like toys to the advanced races. Their history was filled with war and chaos, their leaders barely able to unite their own people. The decision was easy. The Galactic Council gathered in a grand assembly where the fate of Earth would be sealed. Representatives from over 100 species sat in their floating thrones, staring at the holographic display of the blue-green world. There was no debate. The vote was unanimous. Every species agreed humanity would be enslaved. Their people would serve, their resources would be taken, and their world would become just another colony under the Union's control. With the final decision made, the great fleets were sent, expecting nothing more than a routine conquest. As the first warships entered Earth's orbit, the aliens waited for the usual signs of surrender: panic transmissions, desperate pleas for peace. But there was only silence. The humans did not beg. They did not even try to communicate. It was strange, but the commanders of the Union fleet felt no fear. Their ships were massive, their weapons capable of destroying continents. They had crushed stronger enemies before. What could Earth possibly do? The order was given. The attack began. Energy cannons fired from the darkness of space, streaking down toward the cities below. But something was wrong. The moment the first shots were launched, the fleet systems went dark. Communications failed. Targeting computers showed nothing but static. The warships, each the pride of their empires, drifted helplessly as Earth's defenses came alive. From hidden bases beneath the surface, weapons unlike anything recorded by the Union erupted into action. Beams of blue-white energy lanced through the void, cutting through the invaders' ships like paper. Explosions lit up the night sky, and for the first time in history, a Galactic Union invasion force was being wiped out before it could even touch the ground. The survivors tried to retreat, but something impossible happened. The very fabric of space around Earth twisted, trapping them like insects in a web. Their own technology was being used against them, manipulated in ways they did not understand. The Union had believed humans were weak because their ships were outdated, their weapons simple. But they had made a fatal mistake. Humanity was never powerless. They had been waiting. They had been hiding something far older and far more dangerous than anyone could have imagined. As the alien commanders watched their fleets vanish one by one, a single human transmission finally broke the silence. A calm voice, speaking in perfect galactic standard, echoed across every remaining ship. The vote was unanimous. You came to enslave us. Now, we will show you the cost of that decision. The signal ended, and the darkness of space was filled with the screams of the dying. The Galactic Council received the news with disbelief. How could Earth, a single planet, destroy an entire invasion fleet? It was impossible. It had to be a mistake. But as more ships were sent, the same fate awaited them. Every force that approached Earth disappeared without a trace. Panic spread through the great empires, and fear crept into the hearts of species that had never known defeat. They had not discovered a helpless world. They had awakened something that had been sleeping, waiting for the right moment to return. The truth was terrifying. The Galactic Union had made an enemy they could not understand, and now they could only watch as their greatest mistake unfolded before them. The war had only just begun, and humanity was already winning. The Galactic Union could not believe what had happened. An entire fleet, one of the strongest in the galaxy, had been destroyed before even landing on Earth. The council chambers were filled with anger and confusion as reports came in: ships lost. No survivors, no signals, just silence. Some of the highest-ranking officials insisted that it was a freak accident, a failure in the fleet's systems, or some unknown natural phenomenon. But deep inside, a fear began to grow. Something was wrong with Earth, something no one had expected. Still, the Union was too arrogant to back down. They would not accept defeat at the hands of a single planet. They sent another fleet, twice as large as before, carrying not just soldiers, but some of the most advanced war machines in the galaxy. This time, they would crush humanity in one swift strike. The second fleet arrived in Earth's orbit, its commanders prepared for any resistance. But instead of an attack, they were met with nothing but silence. The skies of Earth looked peaceful, its cities shining under the sun. There were no defense platforms visible, no warships waiting to engage them. It seemed as if humanity had used everything they had against the First Fleet and were now defenseless. The alien commanders laughed, confident in their victory. They sent their troops down in massive landing crafts, expecting to walk over whatever weak resistance remained. Thousands of heavily armed soldiers landed across the planet, storming into the cities, ready to capture the humans and take control. But as they marched through the streets, something felt wrong. There were no screams, no civilians running in fear. The cities were abandoned. The air was eerily quiet. It was as if Earth had been emptied. The Union soldiers spread out, searching buildings, scanning for signs of life, but found nothing. Then the first distress calls came in. Platoons began disappearing without a trace. One moment they were reporting their positions, the next, their signals vanished. Commanders tried to contact them, but there was no response. Panic spread through the ranks as more squads went missing. Soldiers fired at shadows, hearing strange sounds in the distance. The ones who managed to send messages back to their ships spoke of things they could not understand: machines that moved in complete silence, energy weapons that melted through armor in an instant, and an enemy they could not see until it was too late. The commanders, still in their warships above, ordered an immediate retreat. But the ships in orbit had their own problems. Their systems had begun to fail, one by one. Shields collapsed, engines powered down, and weapons refused to fire. The warships, each one a symbol of the Union's power, became nothing more than floating wrecks as something unseen disabled them. Then the attacks began. From the darkness of space, hidden stations and cloaked ships emerged, firing precise, deadly strikes. One by one, the Union warships exploded, their crews unable to do anything but watch as their doom approached. The flagship, the pride of the fleet, managed to send one final transmission before it was torn apart. "It's a trap." The humans. They knew we were coming. Down on the planet, the last remaining soldiers ran, trying to escape, but there was nowhere to go. The abandoned cities had turned into death traps, with buildings collapsing around them, roads shifting to block their paths, and entire districts vanishing into deep pits that seemed to appear out of nowhere. It was as if the planet itself was fighting back. The survivors, no longer thinking of conquest, sent desperate messages to the fleet above, only to realize there was no fleet left. There was no rescue coming. They were alone. One by one, they fell until only a handful remained. And then, for the first time, the humans revealed themselves. They were not weak. They were not defenseless. They had been waiting. And the moment the Galactic Union had stepped onto their world, they had sealed their fate. The Union had never faced anything like this before. They had expected an easy war, but they had walked into a trap so perfectly designed that they had no chance of escape. It was not just an ambush, it was a calculated, ruthless extermination. The galaxy had underestimated humanity, and now it was beginning to understand the price of that mistake. The few who survived were left alive for one reason alone: to carry a message back to the Council. A message that would spread fear across the stars. Earth was not a planet to be conquered. Humanity was not a species to be enslaved. They were the beginning of something far more terrifying, and the Union had just given them a reason to fight. The few survivors of the failed invasion returned to the Galactic Union in silence. They did not speak of courage or war. They did not bring tales of victory. Instead, their hollow eyes and shaking bodies spoke of something far worse: fear. The council chambers, once filled with the arrogance of powerful rulers, now echoed with whispers of the impossible. How had a single planet wiped out two of the strongest fleets in the galaxy? How had the humans, a species believed to be weak, unleashed technology far beyond their known capabilities? No one had answers. but the fear of Earth had spread. Some leaders suggested sending another fleet, but the idea was crushed instantly. No one wanted to risk another slaughter. The spies moved carefully, slipping past the destruction left by the failed invasions. They avoided human warships and automated defenses that seemed to watch them even in the deepest void of space. Their mission was simple: gather information and return. But what they found changed everything. Hidden across the galaxy, on distant moons and ancient ruins, were signs that humanity had not always been confined to Earth. Strange markings, symbols matching those found in human history, were carved into the walls of forgotten temples on planets light years away. Wreckage of starships, far older than any known civilization, bore the unmistakable design of human engineering. In a dead system on the far edge of space, an abandoned city was discovered, its towering structures covered in Earth's ancient languages. Humanity had been here before, not just on Earth, but across the stars. And then, they had vanished. The discovery sent waves of panic through the Union. If humanity had once ruled the stars, where had they gone? And worse, what had brought them back now? Desperate to find answers, the Union dug deeper, uncovering forgotten records hidden within their own archives, records so old that even the eldest civilizations had no memory of them. The truth was terrifying. Long before the Galactic Union, long before the empires that now ruled the stars, there had been another power. A civilization that had risen, conquered, and then disappeared. A race so advanced that their technology still surpassed anything in existence. The Union had always believed themselves to be the first great alliance of the galaxy. But they had been wrong. Humanity had ruled before. They had built cities among the stars, waged wars against unknown enemies, and controlled technology beyond imagination. And then, something had happened. Something had erased them from history. The only clues left behind were whispers of an ancient war, a conflict so devastating that even the victors had not survived. But humanity had not been destroyed completely. Somehow, a small part of them had been left behind, stranded on a single planet Earth. And over thousands of years, they had forgotten who they were. Their past had been buried beneath myths and legends, their technology lost to time. They had been forced to start again, believing themselves to be nothing more than a young species on a single world. But the invasions had changed that. The Galactic Union, in its arrogance, had done something no one had ever expected. They had forced humanity to awaken. As Earth defended itself, its people had begun to remember. Old ruins had been uncovered, lost archives had been decoded, and hidden vaults deep beneath their cities had come to life. The technology of their ancestors had been reactivated, revealing weapons and knowledge that had remained untouched for millennia. The humans had not developed new technology, they had reclaimed what was once theirs. The war had not weakened them. It had reminded them of what they were. And now, they were no longer just defending Earth. They were expanding. The Union watched in horror as human warships, far beyond anything they had seen before, began appearing across the galaxy. These were not the crude vessels the spies had expected. They were sleek, powerful, and impossibly fast, their weapons capable of reducing entire fleets to dust in seconds. Planet by planet, hidden bases were uncovered, ancient human colonies reawakened. The galaxy was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard of a forgotten empire, and humanity had returned to claim what had been lost. The species that had once voted to enslave Earth now found themselves trapped in their own nightmare. They had thought they were the rulers of the stars, but they had been nothing more than caretakers living in the ruins of a dead empire. And the true rulers had finally come home. In the council chambers, panic turned to desperation. Peace envoys were sent, messages of surrender were broadcast across space. But humanity did not answer. They had remembered who they were, and they had no reason to forgive. The Union had made a terrible mistake, one that could never be undone. The past was no longer forgotten. The true rulers of the galaxy had awakened. And this time, they would not fall. The Galactic Union had existed for thousands of years, standing as the unchallenged power of the stars. Its fleets had crushed countless enemies, Its rulers had enslaved entire civilizations, and its wealth had spread across the galaxy like an unstoppable tide. But now, all of it was crumbling. The once mighty empire that had believed itself invincible was now consumed by fear. Planets that had once sworn loyalty to the Union were now breaking away, their leaders desperately trying to cut all ties before it was too late. The Council, once filled with arrogance and confidence, had fallen into chaos, its members screaming over each other, blaming one another for the disaster unfolding before them. But deep inside, they all knew the truth. It was over. The moment they had voted to enslave humanity, they had signed their own death sentence. The war they had started had not only failed, but it had awakened something far beyond their understanding. Humanity was no longer just defending itself. It was hunting them down. The first planets to fall were the ones closest to Earth. Human warships, unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, arrived without warning. They did not send demands. They did not offer terms of surrender. They simply attacked. Union fleets that had once stood as symbols of power were torn apart in minutes. Space stations, fortresses, entire orbital defenses, none of them stood a chance. The humans did not fight like a desperate species struggling to survive. They fought like an empire reclaiming what had been stolen from them. Their ships moved with terrifying precision, their weapons cutting through defenses like paper. Even the most advanced shields of the Union were useless. Nothing could stop them. The planets that resisted were turned into burning wastelands. The ones that surrendered were spared, but their leaders were forced to make a choice: swear loyalty to humanity or be erased. Many chose to surrender, hoping for mercy. But others, driven by blind loyalty to the Union, fought to the last. It made no difference. The result was always the same. As more planets fell, the Union's structure began to collapse from within. Trade routes were destroyed, vital supply lines were cut, and entire economies collapsed overnight. The great cities of the Union, once shining beacons of power, became ghost towns as their people fled in terror. The Council tried to send messages to the remaining fleets, ordering them to regroup, to form a final stand against the human advance. But those fleets never responded. Some had already been destroyed. Others had simply vanished, their commanders choosing to disappear rather than face certain death. The few that remained were paralyzed with fear, refusing to engage the enemy. They had seen the reports. They had watched the footage. They knew that fighting the humans was suicide. Even the mercenary warlords, who had once been willing to sell their strength to the highest bidder, refused to take the Union's gold. No one wanted to fight a war that had already been lost. And then the final blow came. Deep within the heart of the Union's territory, where its greatest stronghold stood, humanity struck where no one had expected. The capital itself, the very heart of the Galactic Union, was under attack. It was a world unlike any other, a planet-sized city built over centuries, protected by fleets so massive that no enemy had ever dared to approach. But now, those same fleets burned in the darkness of space, their shattered remains drifting lifelessly. No one had even seen the attack coming. One moment, the capital had been a fortress, untouchable and secure. The next, it was surrounded by a fleet of black warships, their weapons glowing with energy unlike anything known to the Union. The planet's defenses were activated, thousands of automated turrets and shield generators coming online to protect the city below. But it was useless. Humanity did not fight with brute force. They fought with intelligence, with strategy, with knowledge that seemed beyond even the most advanced minds of the Union. Within seconds, the shields collapsed. The weapons shut down. The great capital of the Union, the symbol of its power, was defenseless. The humans did not hesitate. They struck with precision, targeting the council chambers, the command centers, the hidden bunkers where the rulers of the Union had fled in desperation. Every escape route was cut off. Every safe haven was destroyed. The rulers, the same ones who had once laughed at humanity's weakness, now trembled in fear as their world burned around them. Some tried to surrender, begging for mercy. Others tried to flee, hoping to escape into the unknown. But there was nowhere left to run. One by one, they were found. and one by one, they fell. The final screams of the Union's leaders echoed across the stars, a chilling reminder to every species that had ever thought of standing against humanity. And then, just like that, it was over. The Galactic Union, the most powerful force the galaxy had ever known, was no more. Its fleets were gone. Its armies were scattered. Its worlds belonged to humanity now. The empire that had ruled for thousands of years had collapsed in a matter of weeks. And the humans, once considered nothing more than a primitive species, now stood as the rulers of the galaxy. The survivors, the ones who had watched it all happen, knew the truth. This was not just a war. This was a reckoning. The Union had chosen to enslave Earth. Instead, they had awakened a power they could not control. And now, nothing would ever be the same again. The galaxy had changed. The Galactic Union, once an unbreakable force that ruled the stars, was nothing more than a name whispered in fear. Its fleets had been turned to ashes, its rulers hunted down like prey, and its grand cities reduced to silent ruins. The power that had stood for thousands of years had collapsed in weeks, and in its place, only humanity remained. Across the stars, species that had once bowed to the Union now stood in uncertainty, waiting, watching, fearing what would come next. Would humanity become the new tyrants of the galaxy? Would they rule with an iron fist, enslaving those who had once sought to enslave them? The answer had not yet come, but deep down, everyone knew judgment was inevitable. On the distant remains of what was once the Union's grand capital, the leaders of the surviving species were gathered. They were the last remnants of a broken empire, the rulers of civilizations that had betrayed Earth, that had voted to enslave an entire species, believing them to be weak. Now, they stood as prisoners, their wrists bound in restraints that neutralized any form of resistance. Fear was in their eyes. They had seen the might of humanity, seen their warships move like ghosts through space, seen their technology defy all logic. And now, as they knelt before the new rulers of the galaxy, they knew there was no escape. The judgment of humanity had arrived. The hall was silent as the humans entered. They did not wear grand robes or ceremonial armor. They did not carry golden scepters or symbols of power. They were simple, dressed in dark uniforms, their faces calm and unreadable. And yet, their presence was more terrifying than any warlord, more suffocating than any emperor. The leader of the Human Council stepped forward, his gaze sweeping over the trembling rulers before him. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried through the chamber like thunder. "You all thought we were weak," he said, his words sharp as blades. "You believed humanity was nothing more than a primitive race, a people to be conquered, enslaved, used for your own gain. And so, you voted. Without hesitation, without mercy, you condemned an entire species to chains." He paused, letting the words sink in, watching as the former rulers lowered their heads in shame. "But you did not know the truth. You did not know who we were. And now, you stand before us, powerless, waiting for the same judgment you once cast upon us." The room was suffocating with silence. Some of the alien leaders opened their mouths, desperate to plead for mercy, to beg for forgiveness. But the human raised a hand, stopping them before they could even begin. "We are not like you," he continued. "We do not seek to conquer, to enslave, to rule with fear. But that does not mean we will forget. That does not mean we will allow you to walk away unpunished." His gaze hardened, and for the first time, true terror spread through the captured rulers. One of them, a trembling reptilian creature whose empire had once been known for its brutality, spoke with a shaking voice. "Please," it croaked. "We were wrong, we see that now. We acted in ignorance, in arrogance. But we can change. We can serve you, help you rebuild the galaxy under your rule." Desperation filled its voice, its eyes darting around, searching for agreement among the others. Some nodded, others simply bowed their heads, their pride shattered. The human leader simply stared at them for a moment before speaking again, his voice emotionless. "You do not understand," he said. "We have no need for your service. Your empires are gone, your armies scattered. You have nothing to offer us but the weight of your crimes. And we do not need slaves. We do not need rulers. What we need is justice. A cold realization settled over the prisoners. They had seen humanity's power, had watched them destroy fleets in an instant, but they had never understood their true strength. It was not their weapons. It was not their technology. It was their resolve. They did not seek to dominate. They did not seek to rule. But they would never forgive. One by one, the judgment was passed. The worst of the rulers, those who had ordered the enslavement of entire planets, had resisted the Union's cruelty even in small ways, were given a different fate. They were exiled, sent to the edges of the galaxy with nothing but the clothes on their backs. It was not mercy. It was a warning. A reminder that their time had ended, and the future belonged to humanity. Now, the last of the former rulers were led away. The human leader turned to the silent chamber, his gaze passing over those who still remained. "This is not the beginning of a new empire," he declared. "This is the end of tyranny. We do not seek to become what you were. But know this: never again will humanity be threatened. Never again will we be underestimated. The stars no longer belong to you. They belong to all who seek peace, to those who wish to build, not destroy. But if you ever raise your hand against us again..." He let the sentence hang in the air, the unspoken threat heavier than any words. The message was clear. The era of the Galactic Union was over. The era of humanity had begun. And for the first time in history, the galaxy truly understood what it meant to stand before judgment.